Hello guys and welcome to the channel. This is Paper Roll. In today's video we will be talking about the upcoming changes on February 14 for balance batch for the game, and we'll be talking about Ranger in specific, every change and how it will affect our builds and what we think about it. This is quite the interesting one, so let's get right into it. So for a start, AreaNet is trying to remove cooldown reduction trait to open more efficient play style by choosing the skills without having to choose a specific trait line. And Ranger gonna have this in Warhorn from Windborne Notes trait in Nature Magic, and Wellness Knowledge in Survival for all survivor skills, and also Brutish Seal for signet skills in Marksmanship. That is obviously generally, or the concept itself is very good. It will make skills better usable without the traits themselves. It's not directly a buff if your build doesn't change, so you would have run the trait anyway, but it opens different options, so technically it is still a buff, because even if you don't use the trait, you have a lower cooldown in your skill, obviously. Now, let's get from the start. First, there is a big change to empathic bond. This trait used to be splitting condition duration 50-50 in PvE between you and your bit, and 80-20 in competitive modes, with 80 to you and 20 to your bit. It was basically a worthless trait. Building into lowering condition duration is nothing like cleansing. It is very weak, because if you can't remove a condition the moment you want to or need to, you still have it, which means you're still undermined by it. Imagine you get capped on immobilize, which very easy sometimes, 10 seconds immobilize. You have about 8 seconds or 5 seconds. Even if you lower the condition duration by significant number, even 1 second, that means you get CC'd, you get bursted, you need to move now, and you need to dodge now, and immobilize will stop you. So that is a basic example of how this was harmful, especially that it is competing with the main condition cleanse trait in Ranger in Survival, which was Wellness Knowledge, which made all survivor skill cleanse 2 conditions. So it was very bad. Besides the fact it will give a huge duration to your pet, which meaning you weaken the bit and put condition on it, or kill it, or immobilize it far from you. You harm the bit that was already away from danger site in a fight. Maybe it didn't even have the condition, and now you put it on it for no reason. So it was really bad overall. Right now, this trait it changed a lot. The wiki and the notes doesn't say much about it, but they told us on the stream how it will work exactly. So this trait will have an internal cooldown of 20 seconds, and it will reset every time you switch bits, and it will cleanse you and your bit from 4 condition on you. So let's look at it. Let's say I'm running druid, for example. I would use this skill. I will cleanse both me and my bit of 4 conditions. So one thing, I don't know if I need a specific distance between me and my bit, or simply it will work completely easy without distance. I hope they designed it this way, unlike the horrible design on skill Signet of Renewal, that it will always surely will work. I use it, I cleanse 4 condition from both me and my bit, and it's great. So that's the first advantage it will offer us over Wellness Knowledge. Wellness Knowledge will make every survivor skill cleanse 2 condition, but just from us. So right now, like Mechanist, for example, how it work with the mech, we can tank for our bits without using it to result into keeping them in healing trap, or going to Celestial Avatar and cleansing them forcefully with skill 2 or stuff like that. You can simply have this trait and also keep your bit alive easier. Now, generally for any Ranger other than a Soul Beast, this trait is a bit weaker. Like we said, it have a 20-second cooldown and cleanse 4 conditions, but the cooldown will reset every time you switch bit. So if I use this bubble and I stay on turtle, right now I'm on 20-second cooldown. The skill itself is 30, so no matter what I do, it's about 30 seconds. But the moment I remove my bit to another one, I will get the cooldown again, even if it's immediately. I can basically double cleanse. Let's say I'm an iboga fighting an enemy and I got a lot of condition, and can use her skill to cleanse condition, go to turtle, use her skill to cleanse condition. That's 8 condition cleansed, and if you're like me and World vs. World run Antitoxin, for example, that means it is 10 condition in this movement alone. Now for Soul Beast, I'm not sure how this will work. You see, for Soul Beast, if you run this trait, Eternal Bond, you get an extra button that will allow you to swap bits. And every time you swap bits inside, you reset the outside. So let me explain. So if we're not running Eternal Bond and I'm inside the combat, let's say I change my bit, it's on cooldown. I enter, and then I leave, I still have a cooldown. normal behavior. However, if I'm running Eternal Bond, this changed drastically, because inside cooldown, while I'm merged with a bit, I can switch bit still, and that will reset the outside cooldown. So if I hit an enemy here and then I use the cooldown, as you see, it's 90, and I can switch again, and I can leave, and as you see, the cooldown reset, and I can switch again. And this cycle can keep continuing. Now, that's the first thing. So each time I reset it a bit like that, I will have it, maybe, but I still have a cooldown on chilling. How? So the best case scenario, or the most amount of condition cleanse you would have, is if you're running two birds. It's technically if you go with the eagle and the hawk, because both of them have only a 6-second cooldown. So you can rotate between them like that and use it, which is a very gimmicky thing to do, but it would work. Now that gets us to the second problem. Inside the merging itself, your own skill, the one you gain here, is called Beast. So am I counted that I'm still in the same bit, so I have a 20-second cooldown, which means if I use this, I cleanse myself only, obviously, because my bit's not out. And if I leave and use this one, no, I'm already still on a cooldown. Like how this would function with the Beast abilities inside the merging, I'm not quite sure. But as you see, it is quite strong, at least if you keep resetting the skills if you didn't use them on cooldown. That means it is quite decent, at least with Soul Beast. However, the long cooldown on a lot of bit skills, like for World vs World, I'm using Wolf and White Owl. White Owl have 20-second cooldown, which is decent, but Wolf, for example, have 30, and some other bits have 40. So it cannot be that practical unless you are not running any survival skill for some reason and still going with this trait, so at least it is another option. So that was the changes to this trait. Now let's move to the other things. Frag Growth was a trait if we gain protection, every second you have a protection, whether someone give it to you or you give it yourself, you will heal. This trait used to have huge heal, like 250 or something like that, and can scale with healing power. For my druid, for example, it was like, at some point it was close to, I don't know, 350 or 400, I can't remember exactly. But it got hit very hard in competitive modes. So they are bumping it a little bit up again, which is decent. It's a buff to all my builds technically in World vs World, so I'll take it. From 155 to 196, and it will still scale a little bit with healing power coefficient. Now after that we go Windborne nodes for Warhorn, and it no longer reduces the cooldown for Warhorn skills. Both Hunter Calls and Call of the Wild get reduced by the same amount as if they have the reduced cooldown. It's 20%, from 20 seconds to 16, from 30 seconds to 24. However, that make Windborne is a little bit weak trait, because right now it will give regeneration as an extra boon and make regeneration trigger another heal. It can be nicely comboed with something like Healing Spring as trap, since every time you get regeneration it basically gives you an extra heal and stuff, but I think it's a little bit on the weak side as a trait right now, but that is the change. And for the changes to Warhorn itself, I find that very nice with my Power Untamed build. All the links to the build video will have them in the description. But in this build I use Axe and Warhorn. And as you see, I do not run the Warhorn trait, I actually run Evasive Purity, since this build can struggle a little bit against condition, so there is no source of condition cleanse. If you play this form, you only have Mutate Condition, and it's not enough for playing PvE. Obviously you need the ability to cleanse on demand if you want, and that's a very long cooldown to simply have it as the thing you count on, especially that it is the only stun break also in the build. I'm running Cleansing and Generosity Sigil, and I run this one. So Weapon Swap is a way to control, and Dodging simply is a way to control Cleansing. And I do not need really to run this trait anymore. I get direct buff because the cooldown of those two skills got reduced, so this build is a little bit buffed in PvE, which is nice. Now for Wellness Knowledge. Wellness Knowledge also got the cooldown reduction for survival skills removed. So right now it will still keep the Fury and the Condition Cleanse, and probably will still be most of the time the safest option, but that's up to seeing how the batch gonna be in the game, or the different build at least. But most of my builds, at least outside of Soul Beast, will probably have Wellness Knowledge as better. But all the survival, or most of them, and we will explain why now, got their cooldown adjusted equally. So Troll Unguent from 25 to 20, in PvE from 30 to 24, so it will work the same as if you having the cooldown reduction from wilderness knowledge. The same with lightning reflexes, the same with quickening zephyr. However, for entangle they didn't explain why this, unless I missed something. It's said that the cooldown reduced in PvP and vice versa world. There is no reason to nerf this skill in PvE, so I hope this is simply a mistake and the cooldown is reduced in general, because honestly there is no reason for that. And even so, the notes himself, as you see here, and in the note themselves, muddy terrain is a reduced cooldown. That's not what they say in stream. Actually they said that the change will be in PvE and PvP only, because the rise of druids, especially in small scale in World vs. World, they mobilize, they wanted to keep it on a longer cooldown a little bit. So I'm not sure what they will end up with, but I hope it actually get lowered like everything else, especially that it will affect probably lesser muddy terrain. And in lesser muddy terrain, that means we're gonna have 25-second cooldown. Most of our heal is about 24 and something like that. We'd have to wait an extra second. Not having every heal, it's not really the end of the world, but it is a little bit weird. Or maybe separated. So I don't think it's a big deal anyway, but I hope they change it like the other. Now that takes us to the last survivor skill that wasn't even mentioned and didn't exist in the note, which is Sharpen Stone. So Sharpen Stone give us 30 seconds of 10 stacks that will apply bleed on a 30-second cooldown, but since we obviously would be always running this trait, it is on a 24-second cooldown. The normal behavior that we gain the most effectiveness with this is to actually cast it off cooldown to always have it ready when a combat starts. If you needed a condition cleanse even under CC, you can access Celestial Avatar, this build for example, or you can switch from short bow to staff, simply like that, or even stun break with lightning reflexes to have condition cleanse. If you're not CC'd, you can still have the trap and entangled self, and even in Celestial Avatar, even under CC, you can simply cast this skill even under stuns to even cleanse more. So you won't need Sharpen Stone, you're not cornered for this skill for the cleanse, which means having it on you for 30 seconds while the cooldown is only 24 to reset again. In some situation you can sometimes apply up to 20 stack immediately. So if this skill got nerfed and ended up on a 30-second cooldown, 30 seconds for the stack, the same behavior will consist, because basically you have lower cooldown simply by having it on you. As you see here, if I'm running this trait for example, I have 30 for 30, so it's still on me, I can apply it, and only after a few seconds I can do it again. Let's say someone attack me now, or like this is the enemy, I can apply 10 stacks to it, and only in 17, as you see it's counting, I will be able to apply it again. So the same behavior basically will continue probably, but it will not be as efficient, and I don't think they wanted to nerf it. It's a direct nerf to many builds, even in PvE. If you're running it for condition ranger as a DPS, it will hit you a bit. So both Sharpen Stone and the weird thing about Entangle, I'm not sure how it will end up. Maybe they simply made a mistake in the note or something. So I hope they will be adjusted like all other skills. For all survivor skills, I hope that end up this way. Now let's move to signets. Brutish Seal, which is a trait that lowers the cooldown of signets and gives you fury every time you use a signet. Right now, this trait got changed a lot. It used to give might, now give fury and stuff like that. And now it will no longer reduce the cooldown of signets, but it will give might and fury, which is very good if you're playing a solo power build for PvE and you're running marksmanship, which a lot of people would run for Predator Onslaught or Longbow or stuff like that. So I think it is a nice thing. And the cooldown of signets have been significantly changed, at least those three. So it seems either they also forgot or they didn't change Signet of Stone, for example, because it's not mentioned here. But for Signet of the Hunt, for example, it got changed. It was the most immersive change, I guess, because it now gives super speed with the unblockable and got the reduced cooldown from 40 to 20 seconds. That's in PvE and PvP, and they said on the stream it's a 30-second cooldown in World vs. World. And Signet of Renewal, this skill is very annoying skill. So let me start with that. This skill will only, it will break the stun and will only give all conditions, 13 conditions from you to your bit if you are near your bit. It's 600 radius. It will go off cooldown, will not give anything if the bit is a little far away. So you use a huge cooldown to save yourself and nothing happened and you end up dead. Even if you're really good with micromanagement a bit, which I find myself capable of doing this, at least in most situations, like if you got thrown off a cliff and you can't bring the bit to you and your cooldown, that sucks, because now it is far and there's nothing you can do about it. So even if you're good with micromanagement, you can be put in the situation where it not work. And even with all that, it will go off cooldown and it won't give the condition. But let's say it worked and it will give the condition. Those 13 cooldown will kill the bit. It used to actually at least survive a little for the resistance, which is 2 seconds. It's still worthless, because the resistance used to cancel all condition. It will not let anything work. Now it's only with a non-damaging condition. So it's a way to kill your bit, and that's completely inefficient. Sadly, it still works the same, but at least the cooldown got reduced significantly. It's now 35 per second and will give resolution to the bit, which means lowering the damage a little bit. For how long? I don't know. So at least it's a decent option for core ranger player to play around with. Even so, it's not really the greatest, and you might still want to go with survival skills or with a new trait change maybe. Now the last signet that got changed is signet of the wild, and now the cooldown reduced from 40 to 30, so more immobilized, I guess, would be decent, which is a little bit less than what the trait would have given you. So like I said, the changes are a bit significant. Now for Soul Beast, in PvP and World vs World, both the 2 and the 3 skill for dagger got buffed. The cooldown reduced from 7 to 6 seconds, and the other one, the ammo recharge, got also reduced cooldown from 15 to 12 seconds. Now there is PvP changes to the stances. Doliak went from 6 second duration to 4, but the cooldown reduced to 40 seconds instead of 60. Moa stance cooldown reduced from 40 to 30. Griffin stance from 30 to 25. Those all are PvP only changes. And Primal Cry, which I really like this change, it do vulnerability and bleeding, but got added poison to it, so it will help playing around with the heal on poison trait, which is Predator's Cunning, so you can build a little bit into this again. Now Eternal Bolt is the only thing that will affect my hybrid Soul Beast in World vs World, since I don't run Deadly Pet, so I don't use Primal Cry actually. That change will affect my Soul Beast in PvE. Now Eternal Bond got the healing from using any merged skill with a little bit bumped, and since I'm using Celestial gear, that means this healing is a little bit higher. Now lastly, for the Untamed, there was no change to Fervent Force. Didn't come yet. The Arianet already told us they will be reworking the trait, and it didn't come with this patch. However, again, I would like to remind that this is the only efficient or working trait for condition Untamed. If you're playing maybe Celestial or something like that, yes, you can get some of the healing, but other than that, if you're playing full Condi, this trait work for bar damage, this trait work for bar damage, they do not work with condition. We need options, and this one work with any build that have CC, so obviously any build is possible. So if they rework it, I hope Arianet pay attention to this and make it usable with condition too. And right now it is a huge part of DPS for many builds, or everything an Untamed would do. So if it got removed, they would really need to look at numbers, especially in PvE obviously. Now something else got changed. Unnatural Traversal. This one is the most frustrating one to people who fight against Untamed, especially in PvP. So it allows you teleportation immediately to your enemy, and it have no cast time, and that make it usable even under control, as you see here. So they add in a cast time of a quarter second, 0.25, which means other people can avoid it simply by seeing the cast and play around it a little, so it will be better for other people to defend themselves against it instead of not seeing an Untamed coming from far or just from behind you and immediately teleport on you with tail swipe and maul and you're dead. However, since it is a cast time and that skill is not a stun break, that means you cannot use it defensively if you are CC'd. You can't teleport to someone while you are knocked down or something like that. So it is quite the nerf for it. For in a really good hands of an Untamed, the skill lost some of its aspect. Now let's go again with what that changed for us. For my druid build, basically for World vs World, for a start, nothing really changed. I'll be running this one. because empathic bond might be helpful in saving my bed, but it will put me under their mercy and their skills or their cooldown for no serious value, while I can have much more cleanse and usability from actually running survival cleanses. Especially I'm running anti-toxin, which make a skill like lightning reflexes actually cleanse up to 5 condition, because double the cleanse, a single cleanse on the immobilize and then extra trigger on the other cleanses, and it effective with my heal trap and stuff like that. So with anti-toxin I can have more use from all my skills, and if I remove something like lightning reflexes, it alone can equal an entire use of this trait. So I have the other bit to compensate for both sharpened stone, entangle, and the trigger of race and muddy terrain on the trap itself. So I don't think it will be this valuable at all. I would be still running wilderness knowledge. Even so, the fury is not usable to me since I'm running exclusively condition damage and I don't even run sharpened edges, but it is still the superior trait obviously. Other than that, I don't see anything changed for druid. We got a little bit buffed in rugged growth, which is nice, thank you very much. I hope Child of Earth will not be affected by this nerf, and I hope also Sharpened Stone won't. For my Soul Beast, I will get an extra little bit of healing, that's for Versa World also, and I would still be running the same trait. Maybe in Soul Beast I would look into Empathic Bond, and if I find it to be this optimal, I would go for it. But however, if I run the same bits, that's a 30-second cooldown and a 20-second cooldown that must be used. Or even if the ones inside will end up triggering it, that again must be used, but I don't switch bits simply for cleansing, as that will mess up when you need that, when you do that, and your rotation. So it's safer to still go with this one for 2 cleanses. However, if I run more damage like Vulture Stuns, but that means I sacrifice a stun break, will make me have only 2 survival skills, which is Sharpened Stone and lesser Muddy Terrain. So I might look into it, but that up to test. So for Soul Beast, it's up to debate. We will see, I guess. But for other builds, not so much. Now for PvE Soul Beast, we have a decent buff to Primal Cry, but most of the time we don't even use Eternal Bond. We end up with Oppressive Superiority for higher DPS or something like that. That's not my build, that's just an example. It's something I tried. You can find also the video in the description. So it is a bit decent, but that is the only change, that we got this skill to be buffed. And in PvE, I hope Entangle does not get affected, nor Sharpened Stone, or that is a serious nerf. And lastly, we already said about the bar Untamed, and it got buffed a little bit because of the warhorn cooldown reduction. And our contention Untamed is still the same, everything with it, not a single change to touch it. So that's it for the video. If you have any other questions or anything you want to say, put in the comment. I read all of them, and I'll be seeing you next time. Peace.